Hello lovelies, welcome in or welcome back. I'm Syrinx, I'm a cosplayer, a TTRPG player, and a LARPer, and in today's video I want to share a little story with you all. This story is about a LARP I went to, and if you don't know what LARPing is, LARP stands for live action role-playing. Basically, you dress up and play pretend with other adults. You come together for an evening, a weekend, or even a full week to tell and experience an immersive story together. Now, the LARP that inspired today's story is called Omen, which is organized by the non-profit organization called Oneros. It's a Viking-style campaign LARP inspired by Game of Thrones and held on a yearly basis. Personally, I've only ever attended Omen as an NPC, or a non-player character. This basically means that the organization of the LARP will write a character for me and even provide me a costume if I don't have one myself. All I would need to do as an NPC is read my role in advance and show up to facilitate the story along with the organization. I do, however, make my own costumes even if I am NPCing because I just really enjoy the crafting process that goes into it, but you don't have to be crazy like me. A small note before we begin though, this was a very sad goodbye to one of the longest running local campaign LARPs that we had. This truly was a world with so much background and moving pieces all around you that honestly at some points you might have felt lost if you weren't there from the beginning. But that didn't stop me from coming back as an NPC multiple times.
Before we start, a quick content warning. This story includes themes of death, loss, and trauma, including child loss, so viewer discretion is advised. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge that Viking history and aesthetics are often romanticized, and in modern context have sometimes been appropriated by white supremacist ideologies. While this particular LARP did not engage with those narratives and was a safe, inclusive space, that isn't necessarily true for every Viking-inspired event. Not all Viking-inspired events engage with that history critically, and some can unintentionally perpetuate harmful stereotypes. If you're interested in attending Viking LARPs or events, I strongly encourage you doing your own research into their themes, values, and safety policies beforehand. This story reflects my experience at this specific event and not a blanket endorsement of the genre as a whole.
So, settle down as I tell you a story about a family, raised as the noble house closest to the king's blood. Despite the story involving ancestors over many generations, it's a story about 3 siblings. The oldest brother, who felt the weight of responsibility and let it persuade him to the wrong side. One who succumbed to his own Arthurian quest and became blind to the world around him. Then there's a middle child, a daughter who never got to choose her own life until she lost it all, who accepted her fate and carried her head high even in the face of a pyre if it meant keeping her family safe. Then lastly, the youngest brother, who charged forward uncaring about the opinion of others and filled with love for his family, which eventually led to him wearing a crown so heavy he fell. Though there is some hope at the end of this story, it's not a happy one. But the 3 of them did change fate. So before I even get into the story of the weekend itself, you need a little bit of background information on this character, because I played her at one mini LARP event before this one. I was once again going to be playing Leia Stirlachdotter, who is a bard traveling along with one of the noble houses. However, unbeknownst to a lot of people, she was actually wearing this bard persona as a disguise. In actuality, she was the presumed dead queen of the northern part of the realm, called Mannheim. After being threatened by her husband to be thrown onto a pyre because she was presumed to be a witch, Queen Katja fled her home along with the help of another noble lady called Adissa Konraddotter. Adissa helped Katja escape the home just in time so she wouldn't land on the pyre, and the 2 of them fled in search of Katja's youngest brother called Erik. And they met him at his own wedding, where Katja revealed her own identity to him, after which they had a tearful reunion and decided to travel together from now on. Mainly, they were going to travel together to the forest of Arduin, because Erik had business there on political assignments, and Katja had had visions that she was being called towards this forest for some reason. So the 2 of them and their small household set forward towards the forest, and that is where our actual story begins. Our household arrives at the edge of the forest, and Katja had been having visions about some kind of rot that was hanging above this forest, a threat or an unwelcome visitor. She didn't really know which one it was, but it was certain as they were taking steps closer and closer, Katja was getting a feeling of nausea and really getting the sense that things were wrong. A little bit of backstory: the forest had been corrupted in the past, but the leader of the forest and the people who lived there, called the Banrion, they had basically promised and proclaimed that they had gotten rid of all of the corruption and that the forest was fine again. Clearly, though, taking a few steps closer and closer to the forest, Katja had the feeling that it was definitely not gone, and some of the corruption was still at the root of this forest. As she started feeling nauseous and started stumbling, getting these visions again, some people from our household supported her, but I want to stress to you that almost everyone except for Erik still thought that Katja was just a bard from another noble house. They get to a settlement within the forest, and within a few minutes, Liam, a bard who has been traveling with Katja and fled her home with her, and also knows her true identity, told her that they should try and get a meeting with the Banrion to discuss this corruption that's clearly still there. And also, Katja had had a letter by the Banrion that they wanted to talk, possibly about political things. However, it was more difficult right now because Katja did not want to reveal her own identity. But Liam said that he wanted to arrange a meeting for the two of them and left momentarily. I started sharing some of the dreams that I had been having about this forest. I had been having dreams about wolves, I had been having dreams about specific people that I knew were traveling with us, and also I had been having dreams about an ancestor of ours called Queen Ea, who had traveled to this very forest many generations ago and had helped these people so much that she stayed and died here, and in that very way connected our family tree entirely back to this forest. We meet some of the people again that were present at Erik's wedding, among which there is Omen, who is a very tall and broad warrior, all decked out in armor made of actual bones. Katja thought that she had had a dream about someone who looked like him, basically protecting and saving this forest, so she explained it to him. However, he said that it was probably not him, but someone else in his clan, and that he would send them my way so I could explain the entirety of the dream to them. Because Amon also knew my true identity, and knew that there were going to be various political factions present for peace talks that also could potentially recognize me if they saw through my disguise, he decided to hand me this bracelet. Basically, he gave it to me, put it around my arm, and said, "If anything happens to you, if you're in any danger, just show this to the closest people of my clan and they will know to protect you." It was a very sweet gesture and I kept it on the entire weekend. Before I could start mingling around as a humble bard, however, Erik took my arm and pulled me to the side and said that I should keep my hood on because he also heard that there are people around who would be looking for a bard like me. A very subtle way to say, hey, I know that some people might be walking around who know who you truly are, so we need to watch out. Very sweet of my little brother to look out for me, but that wasn't necessary. So I still kept my hood on, but I kept walking. However, within like a few steps that I took, I bumped into two other ladies, after which I swiftly passed out alongside them. As I was told afterwards, Erik freaked out a little bit, to say the least, and he carried me on his shoulder inside the tavern, along with the two other ladies. A little time passed by and we woke up again. Apparently we had all shared a vision there. However, there were a lot of people around us in the tavern being concerned about what was happening, and I didn't know what to make of it. So being a little bit frightened by this and people maybe knowing who I actually was, I asked the two ladies if they wanted to go outside with me and have a talk there. We did. We went outside of the tavern again and to a quiet part of the forest, where we sat down and discussed the vision that we just all had together. Apparently this was a vision from the wood goddess Elenia, who was worshipped especially within the forest there. Both of the other ladies were followers of Elenia as they introduced themselves. There was a smaller girl called Idana who had grown up in the forest there, and a more grown-up woman who had also been traveling called Ravina. We had had a vision together that basically said that on the third day, we three would be dancing around a tree. And even though this dance was a beautiful thing, it would be horrendous to both our body and our soul, as at the end of the dance, only one of us would be left standing, and they would be the new Banrion, the new leader basically of the settlement, and also the new chosen one from the goddess Elenia. It was a lot to take in, both knowing that you were chosen possibly by a goddess, but also knowing that either way, your life as you knew it right now would end in 2 days. I first kept up my fake identity, but as it became clear that I would be bonded together with these two other ladies, I decided if fate has put me on the path of these two, might as well try to trust them a little bit. And also, why was I going to spend the last 2 days that I had holding on to a secret identity? So I took both of their hands and I said that I was going to put my life in their hands, quite literally. I explained it to them. I explained who I was, where I came from, and why I was hiding my true identity. They appreciated it, and I felt connected to them in a way that I had not to many other people. We knew that if we wanted this ritual to go right, first the corruption needed to be gone from this wood. And there was a lot of work for that still. However, as they were both followers of Alenia, it was in their hands to try and get rid of the corruption in time for us to actually save this forest and dance to perform our ritual. I leave the conversation having a heavy heart because Erik dragged me inside of that tavern and he would want answers on what happened. I was going to tell him that I had had a vision, but was I going to tell him that I was going to die in 2 days? We had really just reunited, and the both of us were all that we had left. With our big brother being away on his own Arthurian quests, we were each other's anchors. We needed each other, and we were so happy to be together again, to protect each other. How was I going to sit down with the one person I cared most for in the world and tell them that he was going to possibly lose me in 2 days? I couldn't bear it in that moment, so I decided to avoid him that evening, and I went on other business. Throughout the evening, I attended a few celebrations for other gods, just peacefully observing these people and being happy to just be living this new life. Very late on that evening, though, it was impossible for me to avoid my brother anymore, as I was going to tag along for a seance that he wanted to do. I was not going to let him go into danger on his own. I wanted to be there as his big sister. We attended a seance where a master of mirrors called upon 2 of our ancestors, from our side and from another noble house. Erik did this because he wanted to prove that the other person was from the bloodline they said that they were from. However, the seance turned out a little bit more intense than we expected it, because a literal spiritual representation of our own ancestor Bren appeared there and wanted to call for blood and mayhem, and for Erik specifically to destroy them all. I couldn't really intervene at that moment, but I was raging inside as I saw him nodding along to the words of wanting destruction and bloodshed. It's something I didn't want, and I knew that he was on a path of revenge, which I did not agree with. Once the spirits vanished, however, and we got a moment to breathe and recuperate, I asked Erik to go outside with me to have a little chat. Once we were outside, I was seething with rage, so I proceeded to slap him in the face and ask him what was wrong and what he was saying in there. Not my brightest moment, I will admit, but I was very angry at him. He put my mind at ease a little bit, and he said that he just wanted to do the right things. If he had said no to our ancestor out there, he wouldn't have taken it, and worse things would have probably happened to him. So he said that he didn't want all of the bloodshed. He was just going along with this crazy lunatic of an ancestor, apparently, and he was going to do the right things. In that moment, I still felt guilty to him about not being honest, but I swallowed that as I accepted his explanation and moved on. As I walked back, however, I had a nice conversation with Liam, the other Bard, and I told him the truth. I told him about the vision I had had, and I told him that I was probably going to die in 2 days. I didn't want to be chosen over a child if I knew that Edana, who was still so young, might die if I was chosen to be Bandrion. I didn't want that. Katja had lost 2 children at a very young age already, and she didn't wish it upon other parents to see their kid die. So if it meant that she had to die for Edana to become Bandrion, then she was okay with that. So as I walked with Liam there, I basically accepted that I was going to die in 2 days, and that was going to be it for this taste of a new life for me. Liam cried with me there as we walked, and I cried a little with him, as he apologized for never helping me sooner. He had been with me at various points in my life, and he had never known that I was a prisoner, or he had never known that I needed help. He apologized for that, and I said it was not his fault. In the end, all that mattered is that he did help me, and I got free, and I got to experience at least half a year of freedom with my little brother because of him. That meant the world to me. Nothing else mattered. And with that, the night came to a close, and Saturday began. Things were quiet up until lunch, where some of the political delegations started arriving, one of which really set my blood on fire. You have to know that when Katja was still very young, she was sent away from her home to stay with the mother widow, who had been queen of the other part of the realm many years ago. She was sent there as supposedly a lady in waiting, but what started out innocently turned into Katja being a prisoner very, very fast. The mother widow held Katja for many years, and she even experimented experimented on Katja, both on a scientific level and also a medical level. Katja suffered in her years with the Mother Widow. The Mother Widow traumatized Katja badly. So at lunch, when suddenly, after years, Katja was once again faced with the Mother Widow, her body freaked out. I was sitting at the table, eating lunch, when I spotted her, and my entire body froze up. I started having a panic attack. I didn't know what to do. I was scared that she was going to recognize me for who I actually was, and I didn't know if I wanted to flee or fight or freeze. So I sat there, trembling, crying as I looked at this woman who had tortured me for years, who had kept me prisoner and experimented on me. My mind once again was little me, as I was stuck with the Mother Widow, and I didn't know what to do. Eventually people noticed, in particular Alisa, the noble woman that I had been traveling with and pretending to be her bard. She dragged me inside and called a doctor with us, and in time they managed to reassure me that I was not in any danger, that I was here in the present day, not back there, not back then, and they calmed me down. Alisa also saying that she would gladly kill her for me. As I got out of my panic attack, it was a beautiful scene, I will say. There were 3 people around me, caring, feeling with me deeply, as I probably sat there for at least 5 minutes, crying and shaking. All in game, mind you. Out game I was perfectly fine. As I calmed down, I set my mind to something. If this was truly going to be my last 2 days, I needed to be honest, and I needed to tell my little brother what was going to happen. I go outside to find Erik, taking his hand and asking if we can talk before walking with him to a tree a little further off. As I sat down with him, I started explaining the vision I had had, word for word, not leaving anything out, and also explaining that I didn't want to be chosen. I was probably going to die in 2 days, and that was going to be it. We both started crying there, and he said that our family had already given enough, that we didn't deserve this, and he didn't deserve to be left alone, and he didn't. I assured him that he didn't deserve this, but fate was what it was, and if this was going to be my fate, I couldn't escape it. I might as well follow up on it. He didn't want a future without me, but I assured him that I just wanted to help build a future for him. That was all that mattered to me. I had already had my time. I became queen. I had it all for a moment, but all that truly ever mattered to me was my family. And him specifically. He was my little brother, and he had always protected me. It was time for me to protect him. So as we wiped our tears away, he decided that if it was going to be my last 2 days, and if that was my wish, then I would not be hiding my identity anymore. And I insisted that in that way, I could also help him with political strategies that he had. We took a moment to sit there. I wiped away some of his tears on his cheek, and we set out on a goal. Apparently, one of the political delegates that was present and Erik needed to get on his side was the sister of my husband, who also presumed that I was dead. So we walked up to her, and I revealed my true identity to her. It was actually nice, because she was glad that I was still around and that I had managed to escape. She had felt sorry for not helping me earlier, but all of that didn't matter right now. What mattered is that she supported my little brother. And also, she told me great news. She said that my husband was dead, actually. He had been for a few months now. And I do have to admit, I was overjoyed at that. He wasn't a bad man to begin with, but he wasn't the man I knew anymore at the end. So knowing that he had been torn apart by his own plans, it felt like justice in a way. We sat down there and discussed some plans for the future of the realm, knowing that we needed a new king in the future and that Erik probably was the best choice for that. I didn't want it, he didn't want it, but someone had to do it, and he wanted to unite both parts of the realm once again under one king. He was most fit for the job, and even if I personally knew how heavy a crown could be, I still supported him. And with that and a warm smile, we left the table as political peace agreements were about to begin. All the political delegates sat at a big table, and we were allowed to watch the discussions as they happened. However, before they even happened, Erik started complaining about wrongdoings, because they were promised a certain amount of seats at the table, and they weren't getting them. After some discussion, one of the guards of the Banerion walked up, took Erik by his shoulder, and put him in his place. However, after he left, I started noticing Erik's head bobbing back and forth, and him acting weird. And then mayhem happened, because the corruption I told you about in the beginning of the story, It wasn't gone yet, and it had corrupted the Banderol herself and all of her followers, and now it had also corrupted my little brother. So, running away, not wanting to get corrupted myself, we scrambled and tried to get people who had medicine that could cure this corruption. And at that moment, chaos breaks out for a second. People start getting corrupted and start attacking their friends as we run around frantically trying to find this medicine. A lot of people go down, and a lot of warriors try to fight at the end, but eventually either they also get corrupted or go down. Luckily, we had some people who had a kind of spray medicine to spray onto the corrupted people so that they could get uncorrupted again. And eventually, warriors did manage to take down the Bandrion and the source of this corruption. And peace returned. And also, political discussions as they were taken upstairs to another room. The political delegates sit down once more and discuss the future of the realm. Also possibly getting a king that would represent both parts of the realm now. As they all sit down there and vote one by one for their next king, they vote for Erik, and my heart feels heavy. I don't want this for him, but there's no better choice. So I remain silent as I watch it happen. My little brother, now crowned new king of the realm. I share a glance with him as he goes outside. The evening goes on, and I become more and more aware that this is my last evening. I shared a dream I had with the Bone Warrior. I once again pick up my harp that I used to play but hadn't touched since I had become queen, and I forget all the sadness for just one moment as I play to the darkness of the forest. I share an intimate moment with one of the warriors, knowing that it was going to be my last night. I wanted to experience things that I had never had the chance to. I wasn't locked away anymore. I could choose what I wanted to do, and that sparked some ideas in me actually. As I sat down by a fire with Liam and some of the other bards, I questioned them about stories where people defied their fates and defied their prophecies, if such a thing was even possible, and if there was proof of it. We came upon the fact that there wasn't actually any proof that it wasn't possible. It had never been done before, but there always had to be a first, right? I rushed away from the conversation, now a new goal in mind. As I sought out Erik, I sat down at his table, grabbed his hands, and said, what if I tried to not follow the vision I saw? Not just accept my fate, but make my own. He smiled and started talking that we could reclaim our own fate. We could travel the realm once he was king now. We could take a vacation, go wherever I wanted to go. Go see what I wanted to see or experience. We could reclaim our own home. Now that my husband was gone, it was ours again, and we could make it warm. We only needed each other for that. Our family had sacrificed enough, and it was finally time for us to choose our own fate and support each other in that. He also told me that his wife was pregnant, which brought a smile to my face. See, our aunt had once had a vision that there would be no more children in our lineage, and that made me sad. I had already seen 2 of my children die, and I knew that I was not gonna get another chance, but knowing that Erik's wife was pregnant now, there would be kids in our lineage again, and I would be a great aunt to them, so I was overjoyed with this. If it wasn't my kids, at least Erik could still have some. I'm overjoyed at all of this. Even though it's scary thinking of not following a vision you have, a prophecy you've been told, the prospect of running away with him, traveling the realm together with my little brother, who had always protected me, caring for his children, it brought me more joy than you can imagine. And right there, right then, he convinced me to run away in the night. Together with another bard who was already leaving, he said that I should travel with him, and his wife was not that far away from here, in just another village. I would go to his wife and await him there to see him tomorrow when he could leave after being crowned king. And after that, we would be paving our own paths. I also asked him to promise me to step away from the throne as soon as he could, because I didn't think it was right for him. Sure, he could do it right now, but I didn't want him to crumble underneath it as I had seen so many people before him do. We sit there for a moment longer by the fire as we joke, we laugh, we talk about memories we have together in our old family home, where I sometimes confused him for our big brother and he apparently never knew. We talk about how we will change the course for our family going forward and how we will set a new standard, one that's right for us. I will tell you now, I was supposed to die there. I would stand up from the table, I would walk away, go pack my stuff, but as I walked away, a wolf would come at me and would tear me apart. This wolf was a witch hunter who had known my husband and was on the hunt for me. And the plan was that after a moment of hopeful defiance, I would be slain right there, right then, before it could even happen. But whether it was fate or not, or just poor outgame timing, that did not happen. I said goodbye to Erik, to his household, and left in the night, unsure but hopeful. And what a twisted thing then, that I would never see my little brother again. The next day, I would be left waiting with his wife, hopeful about a new future, to only get word back that Erik had given his soul in a battle to save the future of the realm. And in that sadness, I would lose my protector, my little brother, and I would be left to take care of his children, who would only ever know their father by the stories I told them, and the legacy I made for him. And what a wild twist of fate that would be, that the one who was supposed to die survived, and the one who was supposed to have a future didn't. And in that sad, hopeful moment, that's where our story ends. There's nothing more to it. That was also a very unexpected way of things turning out. Because I'll be honest with you, the plans were very different. The plan was actually for me to die there. And instead, because of everything that happened and because of literal outgame fate, our story turned out the way it did. Which I think is very poetic, and that's why I wanted to still tell this story. It's such a wild ride, and it was such an emotional story to live through. I'm very grateful that even as an NPC, I got to experience that. It was great, and it was all thanks to the other players who were around me, who I could share scenes with, and we could create this magical story together. As an NPC though, during the weekend, I of course played some other roles as well. I played a monster here, I played a witch ancestor there, but in the end, I think it's all about playing in scenes and creating them, but also involving others in them to make a great story. And personally, I think that getting to choose how your character and your story end is one of the most beautiful gifts you could get in a LARP. And of course, because I was an NPC, I also discussed my ideas for this end with the storytellers who wrote my role, who then agreed, and we came up with this specific scenario at the end. And that was it. That was my experience at Omen. A very unexpected, emotional one. If you like stories like these, I have some of them already up on my channel, and plenty more will be coming in the future as I experience these LARPs and share my stories with you. But until then, stay safe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!